Welcome to Perspectives Online and on air from WFSU Public Media. I'm Tom Flanigan, and this program was pre-recorded on Tuesday, May 5th. So sadly, we aren't able to include your calls and emails, but we do hope you'll enjoy the proceedings nonetheless. Certainly, our present situation loosened a bit in Florida on Monday of this week and opened a touch more in Georgia, has still caused more than its share of change in our daily lives, hasn't it? The way we relate with other people has undergone some really profound change, and that extends to not only our personal, but also our professional lives. It's meant disruption, certainly in some cases, sudden loss of income or even the loss of a job. You have fear and uncertainty, a whole bunch of emotions flying all over the place, not all of them good. And rational, reasoned discourse about the whole situation can be, if you have noticed, be a bit at a premium if you keep up with social media. But you know, there's one presentation that caught our attention recently, and we wanted to share its major points with you by having its presenters on to talk about it and to share it with you too. So once again, we're using the Zoom platform to interface with our guests here on our quarantined edition of Perspectives, if you will. And we want to introduce to you, if you don't know him already, Terrie, who is President and Chief Operating Officer of the Moore Agency. Terrie, thank you so much for joining us and kind of being the progenitor of this great presentation, a bit of which we're going to hear as far as the major points are concerned. Thanks for being part of this.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate the opportunity to be here with you.
You also brought a Moore compadre with you. It is Moore's Senior Vice President, Jordan Jacobs. And Jordan, it's been a while. So good to see your face, albeit just cybernetically today.
Thank you, Tom. Good to see your face and glad to be here.
Well, let's talk a little bit about this presentation. And in full disclosure, our Director of Content, Kim Kelling, brought it to our attention, Terrie, because she got online with me and said, you won't believe what I just witnessed. A really nice presentation on how this whole situation is perhaps not the doom and gloom that so many of us have kind of gotten used to being part of as we look at what's going on with this COVID-19 situation. And you and Jordan have been trying to, if not take a more positive angle on it, at least give us some things to think about as we deal with this in our day-to-day personal and professional lives. So first off, I got to ask you, how are you?
Thank you, Tom. I am doing well today, and I appreciate the question. It is an important question, and I will reciprocate. How are you doing today?
Well, as you can tell, we have abandoned the studio except for our anchors, Gina Jordan and Ryan Daly, who go in day to day to keep everyone up on the latest news happenings. But the rest of us are working from the house. In this case here, this is a former daughter's bedroom that we've converted to a studio. So we are able, very fortunately, to continue doing what we do day in and day out. But not everyone is that lucky, and there are a lot of jobs around, and we will get into this too during our conversation, that it is not possible to continue life from a laptop. You've got to be out there actually dealing with people face to face and putting yourself and possibly them at risk. So that's part of what we're going to talk about too.
Yes, and I so appreciate you asking the important question of how are you? I believe that it is one of the best questions we can ask each other. And so much of this has been not only a physical and healthcare response, but also mental health. And if our teams are doing well, then we know that collectively we can continue driving in the same direction. So it's been a common question for all of us here at Moore, as well as with our clients.
We want to find out exactly the nuts and bolts of how you folks in that organization have continued doing what you do, and even branching a bit beyond it as you become kind of larger consultants to the community. As here are some ways, some things that you can think of, options to explore that perhaps you didn't. Jordan, again, same question to you. How are you, and how have you changed kind of your day-to-day life in your workaday situation as well as what you do at the house?
Well, I'm really grateful that I work for a company, like you said, where we really can do integrated marketing, communications, and branding and crisis communications from the comfort of our homes. And we've had that flexibility. But I would be lying if I said it's been an easy transition. Many of us are now wearing not only many hats, because we've always done that, but now we're having to wear them at the same time, right? We have young children at home with us. We have spouses in some cases that have essential jobs and are required to leave the home every day. But what I do love, and we can talk more about this, is some of the genuine aspects that are coming through. You know, clients now understand there's going to be some background noise sometimes when you're on a call, and there might be a cameo from a child or a puppy in the background. And I feel like it's allowed our team and our clients to really get to know each other a little bit more personally.
The concept of silver linings keeps coming up on this because it is too easy to get enmeshed in the day-to-day negativity of the coverage of this pandemic and what it's doing to our communities, our businesses, our supply streams, all that kind of thing. So Terrie Ard, is there a silver lining in this, or is that it just being overly optimistic and blue sky and the sun will come out tomorrow and all that sort of thing? How do you find the silver lining in this?
I believe there is a silver lining, and if you look hard enough, you can find it. Now, every person is in a different place in how they are coping and working through what COVID-19 has created. And so, it may be easy for me to say finding the silver lining is there, but for others, it might be a little bit more challenging. Very early in this process, in early March, I came to our team here at Moore and I said, our greatest opportunity every single day and every single week is going to be to look for the silver lining. So it's really become our mantra, and we share on our intranet page on Workplace Facebook, which is our internal system. We share with each other what those silver linings are. So it might be for a team member seeing their child walk for the first time and they were home and they got to witness that versus the child being at a daycare, or for another team member having a little bit extra time to learn Spanish. So my recommendation is we really have to look for it, and it might not be present right now. It might come more in the recovery and the reimagine phases of COVID-19.
For you, Jordan Jacobs, has this situation given you not only more to think about, but has it opened up more possibilities, more options, alternatives for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some of the best innovations and inventions really do come out of hardships like the Great Recession. And I'm seeing a lot of companies and businesses and individuals innovating in Tallahassee and in the region and across the country. Even for myself, I think it's made me really focus on what is the most important, what is the hardest task that needs to get done for the day, because some of those need to happen, before everyone else in the household is up and working. I also think it's given us some flexibility to really get to know some of our team members on an even deeper level and stretch them and let them try new skills and tasks. Because everyone is raising their hand and saying, what can I do? How can I help more? How can I help further? How can I try something new? And we've really uncovered some different skill sets through that.
Mm-hmm.
We've all had to learn a lot of new electronic interconnectivity. I know we in the news department are we use the Zoom platform for our department head meetings on a regular basis with Kim, but then we use the Microsoft Teams platform. We're able to do that in the news department and stay in touch with each other as though we were right back in the office. So those messages are flying back and forth all the time, although we didn't really know how to do that quite as well before this all began. But it led us to think about, all right, now, if we had another unexpected catastrophe on top of this, and of course hurricanes come to mind, where we've been preaching and the state's been preaching to everyone, have a plan, have a plan, have a plan. How can you, though, do the cascade effect of having multiple bad things happen to your organization at once? How do you prepare for that? Because it's this plus something else, or maybe even a third thing on top of that. How do you do that?
It is a great question. And I believe for every business, there is never a more important time than to have a crisis communications plan. And so, where we are with COVID-19 in the phasing and the recovery starting to open up, it's a good time to go back to that crisis communication plan and really fine tune it. What worked, what didn't work, so that if there is that cascading effect, your company and your leadership are ready for that. For those businesses that might be listening and they're saying, we don't have a crisis plan, but we are making it and we're surviving. Well, it's a good time to start on one, because you can take all of those learnings of what you have just implemented over the past 8+ weeks and document that and get it into a functional plan for your company, and more importantly, for your team. I mean, the crisis plan really helps to give that one vision and one direction for an entire enterprise, and for team leaders within a company to understand what are steps 1, 2, and 3 in the event of a domino effect with, like you said, the hurricane season that might be at play.
So the first thing we have to do after this is what, Jordan? Have an after action get together with all of our various team members, regardless of what our organization is, and say, okay, guys, what worked, what didn't work, and how do we start mapping out that if this happens, then we have to do that.
That's right, Tom. We do the what if scenarios with clients. Let's talk about everything from internal to environmental that could happen and take place, and what are the different steps and actions we're going to have to do in each of those scenarios. I will tell you, in the last year doing crisis communications plans with clients and doing the what if scenario, I don't believe a global pandemic came up. And so you're always going to need to adapt and adjust and think quickly and innovate in the middle of these. But at the very least, to Terrie's point, it's going to give you the structure of, okay, who all do I need to communicate with? What is kind of the choreography and the cadence of that? Which audience gets informed first, second, third? What are the tools, like you said, Tom, to continue the communication and the dialogue internally and externally? And so I think you will find that you can quickly adapt for any new situation as long as the structure is in place.
You mentioned something that is also a major problem with a lot of organizations, Jordan, and that is, okay, we get the messaging to go to the larger public. If we are a restaurant, yes, we are still open for takeout and or delivery, and we're doing this, and we have our social media strategy in place, and we're doing those sorts of things. But very often organizations will neglect that internal communication, and you will have employees, and I know a bunch of them here in town, say, we're doing the best we can, but we are not hearing from our upper echelon, our supervisors, what the heck they expect of us and how we can better function in this new environment. And it's really frustrating for them.
Well, we like to say to all of our clients that your internal audience is your most important. If you get that right, you will all collectively, effectively reach your external audience. And so, we've looked at a lot of research and really studied this even deeper. The trust of companies right now is at an all-time high. And research is saying that employees expect to hear from their leadership daily surrounding COVID-19. It's fascinating. They're trusting their employers more than oftentimes the government and sometimes the media. So that internal communication is critical every single day, but even more critical in a crisis.
Hardest thing for a supervisor in any circumstance is to tell an employee, look, it's not going to work. you need to go, or we need to cut back significantly on your hours and your income. Jordan, is there a handbook to how you do that with compassion and understanding? Because for any boss who has had to do that, that is one of the toughest responsibilities you have.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, I don't think there's just the perfect handbook for that, but I think you said a really important word, Tom, and that was being empathetic. But another word I would layer onto that is just transparent. No one wants to be blindsided. They want to be kept up to date. And even if the forecast looks a bit grim, the team needs to know that so that they are not caught off guard and they're not surprised. And so I think setting an optimistic tone for your team is really important, but it doesn't mean you bury your head in the sand and you don't share the details and you just pretend it's all going to be okay. You've got to be really truthful. You've got to be transparent. You have to let them know, okay, this was the plan. That's not working. This is now the plan. Oh, wait, that didn't work. Okay, this is the new plan. It's important to let them know you're doing modeling, especially at your executive leadership level, to say, we are playing out all the scenarios. Standing here today, we're okay. That might not be the case in a month. We are going to continue to keep you updated. I think addressing the elephant in the room is so important. It's everyone's first question when COVID-19 happened was, is my job secure? And while you can't promise for the future, you can absolutely let them know what the data and the numbers are showing you right now.
We have now something new to ponder, which is the at least partial opening of some businesses in Florida, certainly in neighboring Georgia, just within the past couple of days. And while that may be a positive move for the employees who are associated with those businesses that will be allowed now to function, even at a reduced level, there's still a lot of fear and uncertainty when it comes to not just the customers for those businesses, but also the employees. Will coming to work now put me in jeopardy, get me sick, or perhaps even kill me or members of my family? That has to be something that supervisors will be dealing with too. There are no easy ways, but are there any suggestions that you can make, Terrie, of kind of easing that sort of communication?
Well, I want to introduce the point that you said at the top of our discussion, which is a framework of a plan that Moore developed, and it is the COVID-19 recovery plan. And there are three phases to it: engage, emerge, and elevate. And your question is really centered around emerge. And as a part of this plan, we really developed this in the beginning to help us internally here at Moore. This was birthed to say our strategic plan that we came into 2020 with needs some alterations. And so this recovery plan really came to life, and we started seeing how well it was guiding us in our decision making, that we then started implementing it for our clients and saw such great results that's where we have started introducing it to the public. And so your great question of how do we ensure that we take into consideration the number one most important thing, and that is the protective measures for your team when they come back into the workplace environment. And my recommendation there is that you should engage with your team and ask them questions about this. Do a survey, find out where are they feeling safe and what are some opportunities. They may have the best idea that you could have never thought of that is a real simple, turnkey, cost-effective way to solve multiple people being in a room at the same time. So engage your team and getting their thoughts and considerations on this, not only to get buy-in, but to get the great ideas that they have. They've had a lot of time to be thinking about this. So let's find out what's on their mind.
That does run a little bit, though, counterintuitive for some management styles, Jordan. I think one or two people you've worked with over the years might fit this description, where I'm the boss, I need to have all the answers. If I don't have all the answers, my team loses confidence in my leadership. I can't lead them anymore. I've lost control. I'll lose my job. That death spiral that so many folks in supervisory positions sometimes see, because they've lost control or they fear losing control?
Yeah, I have certainly seen many different leadership styles. And I think what makes a great leader, I can pinpoint to two things. One, they're great listeners, and two, they're great communicators. And the survey idea I love from Terrie, it is something we've done internally already, shows that we're listening. We want to know from you individually what you're uncomfortable with, what you're missing and ready to get back to, what you kind of want to ease into, what you want to go full force into. And then to be a good communicator doesn't mean you have to have all of the answers. It just means you need to communicate clearly and concisely so people can retain that information. In fact, Terrie's can't kick me because we're in different rooms. But we use the saying, she uses the saying, more to come, a lot. And that's because she is so good about giving us the information, which she doesn't have the complete answer yet. She wants us to know where the leadership team is on the journey, on the thought process, what they're looking into. She doesn't wait until she has this perfectly bundled, packaged up solution to come to the team. And so we joke that in each of our staff meetings, there's probably about 20 more to come on that.
I think, Tom, so much of what employees want, they want vision from their leadership. And that vision, like Jordan said, may not be all of the answers, but they want to know that someone is carrying the torch in front of them and they're going to lead them to a great place. So if you can instill that confidence and that reassurance while also gaining insights from your team, that's really the best playbook.
It can be collaborative, but it doesn't necessarily have to be chaotic. I'm
Right.
hearing that too.
Right. Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
How does that work at Moore? You folks have a very structured situation there at the office. Everybody kind of knows who does what to whom and how these are supposed to interface. But there always seems to be an awful lot of spontaneity, if I can put it that way. I'm trying to find some words that describe your particular organization and what has made you folks singularly successful, at least when it comes to crisis communications and marketing and that sort of thing. Lord knows there is no lack of similar organizations here in this town, being the seat of state government and all that. But you've been able to grow very successfully over the years. You got a pretty hefty client list. And now, even in this era of COVID-19, you're able to do outreach to not just your client base, but also the community at large with initiatives like what we're talking about right now.
Tom, you hit the nail on the head. We have had 28 great years of building a culture here at Moore. And what I have found in any crisis, but certainly COVID-19 being an unprecedented crisis, is that all of that great culture building has put a lot of equity in our bank to where when this hit, our team was ready and they were raising their hand saying, what can we do to help? How can we come in immediately and ensure that each team member is taken care of and that this company is taken care of and protected? So, you know, the biggest thing that Moore has going for us is certainly our team, which is our number one asset, but it's the culture every day that every single team member is responsible for building in and helping to keep strong, and therefore allows us to do our greatest work for our clients. It was important early in this crisis for us all as leaders to come in and ensure our team, we were going to do every single thing we could to ensure that we are positioned in a place of strength and we emerge out in a position of strength, and that we were all going to work collectively to do that. So that very clear communication, all continuing to contribute back into the culture.
Those things being in place, though, there still is a a net impact on the amount of business that, whether you're a restaurant or certainly a bar or any of these other organizations, you're going to see less, most likely, in the current circumstances. And I would suspect that not all of Moore's clients are still doing aggressive advertising and communication and all. Many of them have pulled back too. Will you folks get through this okay?
We will. I can sit here today and say that we are very blessed. Certainly, we have had some clients that have paused their campaigns because it's not the right time to be communicating their message in the middle of a pandemic. We have helped to guide them through the right strategy of how to pause when it's the right time to pick up. We've also had clients that have been hit hard on the front line of this, and how do we best navigate for them. But we've also had clients that are in the middle of this as a crisis and having to respond. And so we're very blessed that we do crisis communications, because that's been the lever that's been pulled the very most over the past 8+ weeks for our team. And our team is incredible at crisis communications. We have more credentialed team members than any other agency in the state of Florida when it comes to doing crisis communications. So we've been able to turn on a dime to help those clients emerge from this.
You're listening and viewing, most probably, a special edition, a virtual pre-recorded edition of Perspectives from WFSU Public Media. Terrie Arden, Jordan Jacobs, both with the Moore Agency, are with us here talking about some of the advice, suggestions, and wisdom they are attempting to impart to not only their clients, but the community at large as we are in this whole thing together. And Jordan, I know some of your clients that you have here. What do you tell them when they just say, hey, just keep our messaging intact the way it's always been, just let it ride, don't do anything special for this? And we wind up having, for example, TV ads with all kinds of people getting together and clustered, not observing social distancing, not wearing masks. And it seems to be a little tone deaf. Do you usually tell them, hey, try something else now, maybe?
Yes, if just smart counsel isn't going to resonate with a client, I often find that data does. And so I actually want to share a few data points from a recent study that have really helped reinforce that message to clients. So the first is that this is a pretty stunning number. 90% of individuals want companies and brands to do everything they can to protect the well-being and financial security of their employees and their suppliers. So even if it means suffering big financial losses during the pandemic. So any messages out in the marketplace that are not sending the right message, that they are taking care of their employees first and foremost, is gonna have a long-term impact. The second data point I want to share is that the penalty for companies that put profits ahead of people is going to be severe. So this study showed that 71% of people said that it would erode their trust in a brand forever if they feel like during the pandemic they don't take care of their employees the right way. And then the third is that 83% of individuals surveyed wanted brands to express empathy and support for those most affected by the pandemic. And so if they're out there running commercials that do not speak to the current situation, do not express empathy in the right way, and don't first and foremost say we're doing the right thing by adjusting to take care of our employees, well, they might have some short-term gains against competitors. Long-term, they're going to really hurt themselves.
Because there seem to be, again, this is just personal observation, but a number of advertisers in our area and nationwide who have used the tack. They kind of, excuse me, it's like they're hearing half of what you just said. They're being empathetic. The very somber music comes up and beautiful scenes of, I don't know, a sunrise, or, all the imagery is good. And during these troublesome and challenging times, we're with you and we love you. Now go out and spend money.
It's really funny. Yeah, there seems to be a model, right, that a lot of advertisers are following. Express empathy, tell them we're in it together, use the word uncertain, and now we're going to ask you to do something. And you're going to feel bad if you don't do it. that model, that cookie cutter approach might work for some brands, but it's certainly not the counsel we're giving our clients, because I think consumers are a lot savvier than brands give them credit for. They can tell when you should or should not be in a conversation as a brand. Do you really need to insert yourself in this conversation, or is it the time to sit back and be respectful of the situation? They can also tell when you're being empathetic or if you are truly trying to drive for a profit. And so there, Terrie hit on earlier that we have really diverse clients. That means every client we have, we're having to give different counsel and strategy. And there are some like that, you know, clients that are providing services for free to children, for example, meals being served when school is out. It's important. They need to let people know that resource is out there. They also need to let them know it's going to be done in a really safe, contact-free way. Whereas other clients in the travel industry, now is not the time to encourage someone to travel. So you really have to take it on a case-by-case basis.
We can't really do a 180-degree flip to a purely online situation, though, can we, Terrie? There still has to be some human contact there somehow.
I think we will all crave it. Just give it enough time and we will all crave that face-to-face in person. But through this, I believe we are all finding new ways to work and new efficiencies. I will give an example of last week for one of our clients. I led a strategic planning session through video technology with 50 plus board members. And they all responded. I gave them the option of you can contribute your ideas in through the hand raiser, the chat feature, or verbally. 100% of them used the chat feature. And it was incredible. We have never experienced that before in a strategic planning session where the ideas just kept coming in through chat and building upon one another. It was fantastic. And even our client afterwards complimented how it was so efficient and that everyone really enjoyed that approach. Can that take the place of being in a room and doing strategic planning? Perhaps at the right time with the right client in the right place. I do not feel that we will 100% replace face-to-face human contact. We as humans need that. We need the collaboration and the engagement. It is oftentimes the bright spot for many people, but the silver lining is I believe we will all work more efficiently in how we do that.
Talked to Eric Graben the other day. He is the head of a company that does biotech research here in town and recently flipped over to making hand sanitizer because he has access to vast quantities of alcohol, which many people wish they had access to right now in another. But he was postulating that he sees long-lasting, permanent changes in many of our organizations, whether it's supply chains, whether it's employee relations, whether it's community outreach. All of those things are going to have some changes because of what we are going through right now. Jordan, what do you think?
Yeah, I think you're right. There are going to be some long-term changes, and I think there's not a better time than to really stop and evaluate if your business is providing what the market needs. And so we are recommending clients really stop and listen to what the market needs. I love your example of the hand sanitizer. I've seen breweries around the country, you know, not stopping production of beer because people need that as well. But really using their resources to provide a solution that their audience truly needed at a time they needed it. So they listened, they looked internally and said, okay, we have the resources, now let's make that happen. I think verticals across all sectors are doing that really well right now. I think restaurants are going to experience some things through experimentation, and they're going to say, hey, we should continue to do that. So the family style pickup meals that we've seen local businesses doing a great job of, or cocktails to go. I think there are going to be some long-term things that are winners and some that are losers that come out of this. We've seen fitness industry doing a really good job of innovating right now with at-home workouts and daily text messages. I know my local gym here is doing a great job of still providing workouts, accountability tips, purely body weight exercises. And so I think coming out of this, we're all going to have a lot less excuses to get our daily workouts in. So you tell me, Tom, if that's a pro or a con. But I think there's going to be a lot of lasting change in many businesses after this.
You're also so prescient there, Ms. Jacobs. That's exactly what we're going to be talking about on Perspectives next week. Go ahead, Terrie.
I just feel that this is a tremendous opportunity for every business leader to be asking the question of how can they transform their business? How can they reimagine and engage in new opportunities that will help them to do things differently and to truly elevate? Is it a different service or product line? Is it a gained efficiency with the team? Is it a different way of communicating? We should be all asking that question of ourselves and of our team members.
Being, however, National Mental Health Month, which May is, and you brought this up before, Terrie, some additional counseling, reinforcement, a shoulder to cry on, whatever, is probably going to be required for an awful lot of folks as this continues. Despite the partial opening, this is not over. We may have a resurgence. There may be all kinds of things that are going to kind of stumble us along the way to a full recovery if we ever do get there. But how do we provide support to our team members if we are an organization of whether it's 3 people or 300 people to help them to weather this storm and to stay focused as we head into that rather uncertain future?
I think you have to meet each team member where they are. Everybody is in a different place on this. And when you think about where this crisis has led us, it's a healthcare crisis, it's an economic crisis, it's a pandemic. How do you get your head around really comprehending what that means to our world? And it's an infodemic. And when you think about how we have all been inundated with so much information and sometimes contradicting information, all 4 of those factors really do lead to the importance of our focus being on mental health. So, the question is for your teams, how can you best understand where they are every single week? What is their greatest need? How can you meet that need? There may be some things that a business just cannot provide, but you probably know a connection or a person or a healthcare entity or resource that you can connect them to. And I think now is the time that all business leaders can step up and really understand how you can meet the needs, not only of working, but also in that time that's very blurry right now of home life, and making sure that your team members are taken care of mentally so they can do the great work that's ahead.
Has that redefined our situation too? You used to be able to escape to the office. Now, for many of us, we can't. The home is the office and everything attendant with that. And it can be a little bit disjointing too, because you now have, and you may be a teacher too at the same time all of this is happening. You have these multiple roles that you have to deal with, and talk about being torn in different directions.
Yeah. I believe it absolutely has. It has been my personal greatest challenge, because you walk by your home office and the emails that are there and the answers that are needed. And it's just so easy to slip into that desk and take care of a few of those pressing items versus having a clear cutoff. And I believe that's true for a lot of people. And the work, both on the work front and the home front, it's all blurry. It all folds in together right now.
Is that a unifying factor? Yeah, go ahead, Jordan.
I was going to say, Tom, I know every business is in a different position, but if they are able to provide mental health days to their team members, I highly encourage it. That's something we have been really grateful that Moore has provided us with because of that. Some people are now working 11 and 12-hour days unintentionally. but it's important, and there's busy things happening, and it builds up, and then all of a sudden they're tired, and they recognize that they need a day to kind of recover, go outdoors, get some fresh air, get some extra rest, and then come back ready for the next challenge. And so they're not really vacation days, they're different. And so if a company can put an emphasis on that, I think you'll see it go a long way.
I love nothing more than to see my calendar invite pop up that someone's taking a mental health day. We have 3 team members doing that this week. And it has been an important part of our plan here at Moore, offering those days.
Tough for some businesses, again, to do it if they are under the gun as far as the revenue stream. I keep thinking of restaurants. How many eateries in this town will be able to survive having, if they don't have a big outdoor patio like El Jalisco or something, can survive on 25% of capacity for long?
That is incredibly tough, and a place that I know many friends of ours and business partners are in that place of having to make those decisions, how it impacts their staffing, their ordering, their supplies, their profits, which are already in an industry segment that traditionally sees lower profit margins than an industry average for a lot of other businesses of 15, 20, 25% profits. They definitely have this at a whole different level. And I go back to the opportunity of reimagining and really thinking about how can you add on service areas, product lines to help to provide some offsets to those challenges. But certainly every business is unique and every person is going through different challenges. So it's, it's difficult to say there's cookie cutter here. This crisis has to be customized with marketing and business solutions.
I don't want to be gloom and doom again, but how many local businesses do you think we are going to shed through this? Not just a raw number, but as far as our total local economy when it comes to, and let's talk about hometown businesses. There's nothing you can do about the big chains because they are spread out over a larger area and have a bigger geographic footprint that is going to impact them. But for our hometown businesses in this town, Jordan, I mean, you're out, you see all these different people who have staked their lives on entrepreneurship, a dream. They're gonna make it. And how many do you think, how do you think that's going to play out?
Tom, that's such a tough question. And if I gave you an answer, it really would be speculation at this point, or based on qualitative conversations with business owners. And I think you've seen data shifting every day as it relates to COVID-19. What we feel confident saying one day, we don't the next. But what I do predict is going to happen is the face of companies is going to change. We see individuals doing what we call side hustles these days. Well, I think we're going to see businesses doing that. You're going to see, the bike shop by day that turns brew pub by night. I think you're going to start seeing some of those diverse offerings from companies that they're doing now stay around. And so I think the name and the forefront of many businesses is going to change. We've also seen a lot of businesses partnering with competitors and partnering with similar organizations that you would not have expected in the past. Some at really big scales, like, JSK partnering with a competitor to come up with an immunization. But you're also seeing it on a really local level of, hey, let's let these two businesses partner together to do deliveries. Or, hey, I'm usually an ice cream shop and now I'm going to deliver eggs and milk to your front door. So I think some of those changes are here to stay.
And not just in commercial, but Terrie, also the nonprofit sector. We are seeing a lot of that collaboration and partnership that's going on there too.
We absolutely have. I'm so proud of this community. And, I think the bottom line here is that we have an incredibly strong business community led by the great Tallahassee Chamber. And I am a board member, so I'll put that hat on for a moment. But they have been such an incredible source of resources, information to help member businesses to survive through this and to find where they can turn to get answers. This has been a focus on how can we create new jobs and how can we match the great talent that we have now. It will be a larger pool of talent to the jobs that are available. So you're starting to see some shifts in those dynamics, but our nonprofit community, our business community is strong, all working together. There are examples we could go on for hours sharing of what that has felt like here in our community. And I believe that will help us to emerge strong from this.
We want to be happy and upbeat and more positive as we head towards the denouement of this particular episode of Perspective. So, Jordan Jacobs, what has struck you as a singular success story over the past couple of 3 weeks?
I would say a success regionally has been that businesses that are showing that they care, and they care in a very real way. And they're doing this through a variety of ways. I love seeing businesses say, I am going to do the right thing by my employees. I am going to, in fact, give my frontline employees a higher pay while they're out and having to stock those grocery shelves. I'm going to give paid time off for my employees 65 and older, or might be more compromised in some way and can't come to work. I'm going to continue to pay them. Hey, I'm having to close my business because the store is, closed for now, but I'm going to continue to pay my hourly workers. But I will also say just the generosity of, we live in such an incredible community where people are truly generous with their money. They're making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches to make sure that kids, are fed on the weekend. They're stuffing backpacks. They're giving deliveries to older adults to make sure they're not lonely during this time. I just love watching the human nature of both businesses and individuals during this time. So that's been probably my silver lining.
What's your silver lining, Terrie Yard?
I feel that the silver lining truly is the spirit of this community. And when you look at the healthcare leaders in this community that have done such a tremendous job from day one, Mark O'Brien, Alan Keys, and all the way down the line, helping to be prepared, helping to ensure that if there were an influx in COVID-19 cases, that they were ready. Some of that thinking and those business decisions are going to make this community even greater on the back end. One of my favorite questions to ask is, because of COVID-19, how can we act and work and collaborate differently than ever before? And it's a good question for all of us to ask. So the silver lining is really starting to see some of that come to life and what's still to come for the future for us all.
Final thoughts from you, Jordan Jacobs, if you would, in the few minutes we have remaining.
Well, I want to ask you, Tom, what is your silver lining?
My silver lining is being able to continue to talk to folks like yourselves and a whole host of people in this community that have maintained a connection with, of course, WFSU Public Media, so we can help tell their stories and not only keep people apprised of the day-to-day flow of the news, not all of which is positive at this point in time, but also those better stories of our angels that maybe inspire us to do good in the community, as both of you just intimated, to keep everything on at least a halfway even keel and to be creative, be resourceful, and help other people, because let's face it, we all need help in this time.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Well said. And thank you for all you do, Tom.
Yes, thank you.
The news every day.
Well, and we sure appreciate your coming on and sharing some fascinating points that maybe many of us did not even consider. And coming out of the side of this, I keep thinking of my old uncle, who was a terrific pipe fitter in a group of steel mills in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, way, way back in the day when there were such things. And he always pointed out that no matter how bad things look, it could be worse. You could fall into a vat of 3,000 degree metal. But he also reminded us of another thing, and that is that it takes that 3,000 degree heat and annealing and all of these really violent and catastrophic events to come out with something good on the other side, which is a bar of beautifully proportioned steel that can be used to build an automobile or a skyscraper or a beautiful ocean liner, any of these sorts of things. So on the other side of this, maybe through our baptism of fire, we'll all come out better for it. And Jordan Jacobs and Terrie Yard, both of the Moore Agency, thank you for sharing your wisdom with us here on our virtual pre-recorded edition of Perspectives from WFSU Public Media. All the best to the rest of the
Our
team
pleasure.
up there. Please tell Karen I said hey, okay?
Thank you, Tom.
Will do. Thanks, Tom.
Perspectives produced by WFSU Public Media in Tallahassee. We thank our audio master, Taylor Cox, video magician, Paul Dam, Tricia Moynihan, Lydell Rawls for their cybernetic wizardry, and director of content, Kim Kelling, for setting up our program interface and also keeping our train firmly on the tracks. Love you for it, Kim. I'm Tom Flanigan. Many of us have accumulated, should we say, a bit of additional body ballast during the COVID sequestration. And we're going to talk about how to get back to fighting trim on next week's Perspectives, right here from WFSU Public Media.